Thank you for taking the time to watch this episode of Life Support. If you enjoy the content, we would ask that you like it, hit subscribe, and share it with your friends. Hey, I'm so glad you're with us on Life Support. What we do on this program is we talk about difficult subjects, we talk about trauma and suffering because we want to introduce you to how Jesus reacts in those situations and how Jesus always shows up. And I hope you'll be encouraged today. Our guest again today is Emily Carrington, who is the executive director of the Early Pregnancy Loss Association. We had a wonderful conversation last week, and Emily, thank you very much for coming back. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
So just as a reminder, tell me again about how the Early Pregnancy Loss Association got started and how you got involved with it.
So we were started about 5 years ago with a group of lost moms who had come together after our own experiences with miscarriage and really identified that there was not a good solution and not necessarily good services available for women experiencing loss. So we came together, we started the Early Pregnancy Loss Association and started worrying or providing services, educational resources. We now provide miscarriage care kits as well as educational resources. The care kits are small. We have small and large care kits. The small care kits are for early pregnancy loss. And these are comfort items, memorial items, as well as sanitary items. And then the large care kits are sanitary items for a home miscarriage. So we provide those throughout Southern Michigan and throughout the whole country.
So we talked last time a lot about the stigma of all of this and the hesitancy of people to talk about it. And sometimes the church isn't always the best place to navigate through something like this. Can you talk a little bit about how people within a church body can help someone that is experiencing this, and maybe how the person themselves can reach out to a church body in a way that's healthy in order to get help if she needs it?
Right. And I think it's interesting. I was thinking about on the way here that churches are already so equipped to take care of these. You said a church body might not be the prepared or the most natural, and they're already doing the things. The things I'm going to say are things that churches do. And I think it's connecting that these need to be done for miscarriages. Like we talked about, these are so under tended to. And I think that these need to be also done for miscarriage. So things churches can do. Rituals, funerals, memorials, worship. This is what the church does. Even the unchurched go to churches for funerals, right? So offering these things to women, and they may not be thinking about it, and it may not look exactly like a funeral that you have for your grandfather, that you have. It may not be a big funeral. It may not have an obituary. My own experience was a very small, private funeral with family, my parents, my husband and his parents, and then our pastor and associate pastor. So it was a very small, intimate experience. A later loss, after we had moved, we were at a different church. Instead of having a funeral, we just had a prayer service where 4 of us sat down and prayed and read scripture. But that was led by our pastor and suggested by our pastor, and that felt very appropriate for the situation we were in. So those are the things churches are really good at already doing. So let them do that. Providing meals, right? Churches are so good. So many churches, every church I've been in has been so good at feeding people. This is what churches do. So provide them meals. And again, this is realizing that miscarriage is something that merits this. It's going to be, or ask them. Maybe it's not. And every loss isn't necessarily the same in that way. Are they going to have a DNC? Are they going to be down for a few days? Are they waiting? When do they need meals? Are they waiting to pass the baby? There's some questions that can be asked. By understanding what a miscarriage is, there are questions we can ask about to know their needs better. And again, churches are good at that. Also, another thing I think churches are really good at is knowing their resources. Churches connect people with resources all the time, right? And we talk about it. Your churches should know where to get food. Your churches should know where to get shelter. Those are things that come to you, right? Like our churches know the social resources available in town if they don't provide them themselves. You also need to know the resources for loss. So know that we're out here, and we want to tell you all we're out here. Know that there's other groups out there. Is there a support group meeting in your town? There's some really great organizations. There's also so many groups led by moms providing care kits to the hospitals, and have been forever. We're not the only organization out here. So know who's in your town. Know what your resources are. This may not be something that your congregation can meet and do, but connect. And so I think that's a really important thing churches can do. And then just to listen, right? These are what are what we're here for, right?
Yeah.
To listen, affirm, remember, give these spaces. I'm summarizing here a blog that's on our blog post too. So like if you don't know what to do, Google what can I do? And organizations out there have put things together. And then we've done some research on this. Many churches have resources available. And they may not even know it, or they may have documents available, or they may have services or liturgies. Or I know, my husband just turned to very early, church documents and statements of faith and statements of belief and what we think happens to children. So, it's our job at Early Pregnancy Loss Association. We really want to equip anyone that is caring for women and children following loss. But we think churches are really poised to already be doing that with everything they already have in place.
That's good. And now here's a practical question for you. Many pastors are male. Okay. And so a pastor hears about a woman that's been through this. How does he best move into this situation?
Right. So that's going to be really complicated with, I'm not going to have an easy answer for that. I think that's going to be different with every family, different with every pastor. Your relationship with that family, your relationship with the pastor. Some things that I think have comforted some women have actually bothered others. So some of that is to take her lead. And I wish I had a clear, it's just so dependent.
Yeah.
And I think something you said last time that is so important is to take her seriously. Mm-hmm. So whatever you're doing, I'm not gonna give you a good prescription for a way that you're gonna like perfectly do this. But you're gonna take her seriously. So that is such an important part, figuring out what it is she needs. And again, not assuming that the pastor or the one person or the deacon or the administrative assistant is going to solve the problem, but connect her with the resources she needs, and to move forward from there.
Yeah, and I would think practical steps like maybe a woman on staff makes the first contact and then asks some questions and kind of leads the pastor forward. If all else fails, I just put a note in the mail and ask, because that's a very kind of a properly impersonal way to approach that if you don't know the woman very well.
And
And gives her time and space then to respond how she wants to, or if she does or doesn't.
I think too, it's of course a very intimate issue, and it's something that there's two sides of it. It's intimate and it's physical, and
Yeah.
that may not be something that she wants to talk to men about. But also, if you focus on her baby,
Mm.
that isn't about her.
Mm-hmm.
That is about her baby, and I don't think that would be something that the gender of the person loving my baby
Yeah.
would cross any sort of intimate barrier, or any discomfort. That really focusing um, on her loss and taking that seriously too is an important part of that, as sort of any grief, any care that this pastor is already giving women, right?
Right.
So those gender relationships are already happening, so take it seriously and sort of focus on what she lost.
So you talked last time a little bit about the unknown being a real factor when these things happen. If a woman just doesn't know what to expect, both physically and emotionally, it can be really difficult for her to work through.
Yes.
What does your organization do, Emily, to help, I guess for a better way of putting it, equipping women
Mhm.
for the eventuality that this could happen?
Right. So we think our miscarriage care kits are actually, in terms of understanding what's going to happen to your body, are the clearest way to see that, and to understand it. We of course provide our educational resources, and we want to raise awareness. As many as 1 in 4 women might experience pregnancy loss. So understanding miscarriage in general is our concern. But once it's happening to you, we still think, unfortunately, there's a lot of information not there. And we can't say exactly what's going to happen. Every miscarriage is different. And we're a group of lost moms. We're not a group of doctors or counselors. We are just trying to get the right resources into people's hands. So our miscarriage care kits, especially the big ones, have a lot of sanitary supplies that might be a little shocking, and you wouldn't realize you need them. We have bed pads in there, in case she's to collect blood. And we have, in case she's bleeding through things. We have, of course, large pads. We also have a body retrieval kit, in case the woman wants to retrieve the body, even as, with pictures of what a 6, 8, 10-week body might come out looking like. So we get those from another organization called Heaven's Gain, and we like working together with them because that's just really something that we needed in our kits too. We have hot and cold packs, we have gloves, and we think that while these are hard to go through and hard to receive, knowing that this is probably going to be a messy, bloody, and painful experience is a good way to start. And we try to, and then we try to share stories, the stories of others. We've had moms reach out to us and say, what's going to happen, or how can I choose? Should I have a D&C? Should I deliver at home? And obviously, we're not their doctor. We can't tell them that. And always say, please talk to your doctor first. But then we say, here are some stories. They're not necessarily asking for a medical procedure. They want to know some stories. So here are some stories of what have happened to other women. And I think that's comforting to know that those are, sort of the range of possibilities, and to help women be prepared for that.
Yeah, I actually really appreciate you sharing what you just shared, because, God created the human body, and God is not ashamed of the human body. I've had, a couple thousand children in my life, it seems. That's my bank account thinks that anyway. So, I mean, these are the realities of life. And the more that you can talk about that helps the rest of us understand, the depth of kind of what's going on there. Because unless you've lived through one, you don't understand the depth of it. You don't understand all of the things that are going through a woman's mind and so forth. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Right. Right. Well, thank you.
And
Yes.
so tell me a little bit then about a friend walking alongside of this woman. Let's say now we're a couple days out, maybe. Life, quote unquote, is supposed to be returning to normal. What can friends and family do to help this woman get back on her feet and just be there for her the way she needs them to be?
Right. So realizing that it's going to be a slow and bumpy process. I look back and there were days that I was more okay than I should have been. And I wanted to just be normal and go to the grocery store and be normal. There were other, and my sister and her husband came to visit, and we sat on the porch and drank cider and played games. And it was, I needed to not just be sad. And they were sort of there for whatever I needed that day. And there wasn't like, but we came here to cry with you. They were able to give me that space. And then to realize, but then months later, there were other triggers that were a lot harder. Christmas was awful that year. Thanksgiving was awful. Just was getting around to the time of my due date. I should have been due around Thanksgiving, and it was sort of came out of nowhere. So like a few months earlier, I was a whole lot better. And so realizing that and giving space for that is sort of step one. Other things just are. I said this last time, watching their children cleaning their floors, bringing them groceries, delivering books, writing them letters, trying to walk through that grief and finding a way that is, appropriate for your friendship. But all of the things you would do in any other crisis are appropriate for this. And sometimes, if you're at the grocery store, text them. What do you need? What's on the top of your list right now? I'm bringing it to you. Don't give them a choice. I think one thing, this has been great. A lot of people have talked about this in recent years. Like, don't ask people what they need because they don't know.
Yeah.
Offer something. What is it, the thing that you can do? And it may be, so it may, what do you already have? Consider that. For me, it's putting together a whole new meal for another family. Right now, I have 2 small children. That's not always easy. But sometimes I realize, like, I cooked a lot of dinner. I should take it to a neighbor, So what are the things that you have? Even and evaluate that. I think that's something I've been learning in my life lately is what are the resources I do have and how can I share them? And that woman and family going through that loss, it may be you have a quiet house and all she needs is a cup of tea. So, so maybe she wants a cup of tea alone. So you bring her children to your quiet house or vice versa. So those are some of the things. There's a lot of hands-on ways to help.
Well, I think you said it well when you said, it's like a lot of other grief. And I think that calling it grief to me would be like the first step. Like, this is serious. She's going to be going through some stuff here, and then just walk, praying for wisdom. Sometimes it's better to be quiet than, boisterous. You can't really say things to make it better sometimes. But to understand that it is real grieving, I would think would be a good place to start.
Yes. And to stop, I think it's important to say there's so many great lists out there of what not to say to a woman who's experienced loss. And, to stop and focus on that grieving. Don't talk about that she can have more kids or at least she has kids.
Oh, yeah.
Don't promise her things that might not be promised. There's
Yeah.
a lot we don't know. So stay with her in that loss, and don't make promises. Don't Any sentence that starts with "at least" is probably the wrong sentence.
Yeah.
So shove that back in. At least you have kids. At least you're young. At least you have a husband. All of those
Yeah.
come
Right.
out wrong.
Because they don't take away the loss is still the loss. It's like people come and, I lost a child, and they'll come and say, well, you'll see him again someday in heaven.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, I know that, but
Right.
the loss is still the loss. So that's not helpful to me. What's
Right.
helpful, I think, to people is that I'm glad you care. That's what I need. And then,
Right.
and then I will help steer you toward whatever I'm thinking that I might be needing. But yeah, I think that's really good advice for what you're saying. And I can only imagine, having never been through this, obviously, I can only imagine the confusion and the disappointment and all of those emotions that come with it when you've had your heart set on this and you've got a due date, and all of a sudden all that's gone,
Right. Right. And another one is God works all things together for good. And
Yeah.
well, that might be true. That might not be a great time to say it.
Yeah. Right.
Because she's confused and she's frustrated. And that might be something she would want to work out later. There were a whole lot of things I wanted to work out and needed truth and God's actual promises, which were not, you will have a bunch of children. I didn't know that. I needed, but until she's asking those questions, it's not time to offer her.
Yeah. Right.
It's just going to hurt.
Yep. All right. So the Early Pregnancy Loss Association, you've done a good job describing what kind of services you offer. How can someone get in touch with you?
So you can email us at miscarriagecare@gmail.com, or you can find us online, miscarriagecare.com, or you can find us on Facebook and Twitter. Either search Early Pregnancy Loss Association, or our handle on Twitter is @miscarriagecare. You can find our resources in all of those places. We also have a podcast that just went up called Hope Blooms, but you can send us direct messages on any of those platforms, and we will find you.
Okay. Emily, I'm so glad you dropped by. Thanks so much for sharing your wisdom with us. All the best.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.